Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we're keeping it geekly with two of our new guests. We have Rafer Roberts and Mike Norton. We're here to break down their awesome, brand new comic, The Rock Gods of Jackson, Tennessee. Dude, I had a blast reading this book. Before we dive into it and plug in those amps and get on stage, let's dive into who you two are and how you guys got into comics. Mike, let's start with you.
Well, how did I get into comics? I got into comics. I grew up even before. I'm from Jackson, Tennessee, and even before that, we lived in a small town called Selmer, and my dad worked in Jackson, and he would buy comics on the way home at like a gas station for me, and that's the first time. That's when I got into comics. I was probably 5 years old. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I was learning how to read from this stuff. And yeah, it was like some old Spider-Mans, and he kept bringing home all these Marvel comics. And, and then Star Wars came out in 77. And, all I ever wanted to do was make stories on paper. So, I mean, it was it's a pretty simple story.
So when did you start actually doing that and putting it to paper? When did that journey begin?
1997. That was my first professional job. So I've been working in some way or another since 1997.
That is awesome. Rafer, what about you? When did you begin your journey into comics?
Yeah, pretty similar. Around 5 years old, I was just riding in the back of my mom's car while she was like taxiing people to and from the airport. And she would buy me comics at the newsstand just to keep me quiet. And after it just stuck. I got like also Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, cool!
Like my first comic subscription, the Roger Stern run with the intro of Hobgoblin.
Sure. That's a good one.
That's what got the JRJR. Of all the comics to start, that's a good one. It's good. Like got great art, really good story, and it taught me. I just got hooked. Just like the soap opera of it, and started making my own comics basically the year after, started drawing comics about monsters, and by third grade I was stapling them and trying to sell them to my friends. So there was always that
That's
there was
awesome,
always that linkage of art and commerce, I guess, for me. Even from a very early age.
So when did you start working within the comic industry, though? Like, when did you, what was maybe your first title that you worked on?
The first comic that I published is Plastic Farm. I self-published, and I did, like 1 million issues of that. Just recently finished it up. But honestly, the first real professional comic that I ever did was Archer and Armstrong, where somebody else paid me and I wrote a script and it went through editorial and another artist drew it. So, Mike, you were like the second artist I ever worked with on a professional level.
That's awesome.
It was like you and Dave LaFuente was first.
Oh no, I'm not the best anymore. You mentioned
You were.
David LaFuente is like a god among men.
Well, I will say that you drew my scripts while Dave went off on his own, so that was a different learning experience.
Dave's an artist.
Yeah, so
I'm not an artist. Dave's an artist.
Yeah, Dave's like, I get the pages back, like, all right, where am I putting all this dialogue that I wrote? It ain't going where I thought it was.
Can't tell him what to do.
Yeah.
So that is so cool. Right. That was your guys' first experience working together. I mean, how did that go for you two? Mike, how was it when you first got his scripts and started working off of that? What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting. I didn't know Rafer. I assumed that he was good because they gave him one of their flagship titles and the #1. So I was like, well, who is this guy?
Whoa.
And I read the script and I mean, seriously, I had all the elements of what like the good writers that I've worked with in the past. It was very descriptive but simple. It was very much like a movie script in that way, where they describe all the stuff that's important, but then say, well, you know how to draw a comic book. You do the rest of it. And those are the best kind, because you need direction. At least I do. I'm not David LaFuente. I don't go and I just make up, But I like the direction, but it's also very. Rafer realizes it's a collaborative medium, and so he knows when to back off, and he knows when to put his ideas in there, and that only comes with somebody that has been writing comics for a while, and he already told you that was his first paid gig. So I mean, I think he was ahead of the curve.
I mean, was there a lot of pressure when you found out that you had a flagship title that you were writing for?
Yeah, a little bit with Archer and Armstrong, but that one was really in my wheelhouse. So jumping into that sort of superhero comic wasn't as difficult as when they later put me on Harbinger, which was a much different experience. But that doesn't involve Mike, so we're not going to talk about it.
So you have some experience being an artist as well, though. Do you think that kind of helped with your script writing?
I think it does, and I approach the script as I write a script how I would want to get a script, in that just tell me everything you're thinking, I'll figure out the rest. If you want to break it out into panels and tell me how the beat goes. But yeah, I focus generally on the emotion and the action and break it up into beats so that I can show the rhythm. But even if the artist doesn't follow my exact panel breakdown, as long as they're getting the gist and telling the story the same way or through their interpretation, then it's good. I can draw. If I wanted to draw these comics, I could. It would take 20 times as long. But the reason I like working with other artists is because I don't want to hamstring anybody. I don't want to. It's like, why am I working with Mike if if I don't want him to be Mike? Mm-hmm. Why am I going to work with Dave LaFuente if I don't let him to be Dave LaFuente? Yeah. Like, you don't shackle your artists. You let them shine. You give them the tools to let them go out and make you look like a better writer. Because I'm an okay writer. I can write an okay comic, but Mike can draw a really good comic, and then when it comes back, I can put some words on it and be like, yeah, I did that.
I love you too. Like, Rafer, you had a flagship title. You're like, I'm okay, but I just had, one of the biggest titles, like right off the rip. And Mike's like, I'm an okay artist, but, has awesome series, left and right. So this isn't your first collaboration, though. Tell us a little bit about Grumble as well. Mike, why don't you go ahead and take the wheel on this one?
Grumble was an idea. I had the opportunity once to draw Hellblazer, and for some reason that didn't work out. And I was like, I really wanted to draw Hellblazer, so I decided that I was going to draw Hellblazer, but I was gonna combine it with Howard the Duck some way. Mm-hmm. And I talked to Rafer, and we made the duck a pug. And we made the pug also Hellblazer. so that was the origin of Grumble. I wanted to draw a book about a jerk magician who got stuck being a dog, and Rafer is really great at writing weird stuff, which is why we're working on Rock Gods. Rock God started out as like a serious autobiographical comic, and then I was like, this is too heavy for me. And I said, Rafer, you want to make this weird? And he made it weird.
So for everyone watching... Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Real quick, right here is a link. You can go to the Barnes & Noble site and pre-order this. This is dropping June 6th, if I'm not mistaken. So get your pre-orders in. It's it costs I think $20. It's 200 pages, outstanding read, but it's free to share this link. Put this on Facebook, put this on Twitter, put this wherever you can. Word of mouth is 100% free. Rafer, before I interrupted you, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, with Mike was saying that I came on to Rock Gods to weird it up. When he came to me with Grumble, it was just a weird story, and then I went and serioused it up. So
Yeah, you did kind of. You actually gave it a story. I just had a weird idea, and then you gave it an actual story.
Yeah,
You
it's kind
made
of weird.
it
I
into
only
an
just
epic,
realized.
actually. It was like it didn't start out as like this epic story, and then Rafer put all these different,
Yeah.
aspects to the characters that I had no idea. I just said, wouldn't it be funny if you had a little magical jerk dog?
Is that so? Did Battle Pug come first or before or after that?
Battle Pug was first. I have I'm a one trick pony when it comes to ideas. I kind of have. I really I get obsessed about.
I just thought you loved pugs. I don't know, because
I
pugs was
do love
mentioned in
pugs.
the Rock Gods of Jackson too. I think there's a store or something.
Oh yeah, I try to fit it into everything now.
That is awesome. So, Rafer, tell us a little bit about the Rock Gods of Jackson, Tennessee. I mean, what's the story about?
Sure. Rock Gods of Jackson, Tennessee is about these four misfit kids who stumble on the gig of a lifetime opening for returning rock god Tommy Tungsten, who'll be putting on a gig at the local high school. But instead of living out their dreams as rock stars, they instead have to fight off a horde of mutant pigs that have escaped from the local perfume factory that is rampaging through town.
And this is a
That's the best I've ever done that.
It's a rockin' issue.
Ah.
I loved it. And speaking of your character development, Mike was talking about that earlier. I thought these characters were phenomenal. The way you guys went about, just introducing them initially and then like kind of focusing on them and their home lives and like why, on the outside, the school, the way they look at them and, how they reflect on them and why they're really that way because their home lives and what goes into that. Rafer, this was a beautiful story, man. What went into, giving these characters life?
Well, they're all theoretically based on people that we know, but they're not. Mike originally came to me with the story based on his friends, and his friends somehow coincided with who my friends were. So they're sort of an amalgamation. But basically, these four kids, we start with Marty, who's the town bad boy, who's setting fires, getting in trouble. The cops give him a hassle him all the time. So he's like the town bully. All the other kids fear him, but what you come to learn is that he's as much a victim of this town as anybody. So it's really like this Stand By Me meets From Dusk Till Dawn, where it's this mishmash of these 80s cheesy horror movies, but with some really heartfelt, deep diving character emotions, all mixed in with this cheesy, over the top horror spectacle that kind of softens everything in a way and makes it easier to digest.
Yeah,
It really is. We tackle some kind of heavy themes about childhood and growing up and looking back at your own childhood with maybe unearned nostalgia and maybe a little melancholy now, but in this in the same way that a good rock video will sort of just wash over you and make you just forget your problems at the same time.
I love
if any of that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I loved how in this, like, music was a big thing, how people could escape from their problems. And one of my favorite things too is like when someone was trailing off or maybe like getting, escaping into the music, you would have the lettering like fade. So it would be, black and it would fade to white. And it was such a subtle but awesome touch. Man, this book had so many awesome details, Easter eggs in it. The Rock Gods mobile looked just like a gremlin. Mike, what went into some of the designs for this? Did you have a lot of these ideas already beforehand, or did a lot of this get hunted out with Rafer?
Well, I mean, if Rafer had an idea, he would give it to me, but a lot of it, was... I didn't think about it beforehand, but while I was working on it and reading the script, I mean, a lot of it was memories of growing up, and my first car was a Chevette, not that far off from a Gremlin. It's a little later on, and there were very few kids at my high school that had very nice cars. So We wanted to give Lenny. Lenny was the kid that had the car, so we wanted him. He lives with a great family, but of modest means. So yeah, a lot of the stuff is based on real places and real things and real people that I lived with for 10, 15 years.
So did you guys also jam a little bit when you were younger too? Any like high school bands?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my band, the basement that they practice in is the basement that I practiced in. And they had the posters and the laundry room where the cat box is, and all of that stuff is my friend Matt's basement.
Did it always smell like cat diarrhea too?
No, they didn't actually have cats. That was a Rafer invention. So
that was my friend Scott.
Yeah.
Clean it up, Scott.
Yeah.
So what instrument did you play?
I played guitar, and I sang and played guitar because we had a singer who could afford equipment and could get us gigs, but he could not sing. So we would turn down his PA, and I would sing instead. And
that's a hard thing to do.
He never noticed.
That is a hard thing to do. Like, I can play, but like playing and singing is so hard. My brain just cannot do it. It's like, nope, I can't keep on this measure.
Oh, it's not. It's not easy. And we're acting like this was a real band. I wasn't good. We weren't good.
Maybe good to yourself, though, right? Rafer, what about you? Were you in any high school bands as well?
Yeah, I was. I was the Doug of the band, where I was.
Love it.
Theoretically a lead singer, and would occasionally break out my saxophone for no good reason, which I did not know how to play very well. So that part's fairly autobiographical. And yeah, we played in the same crappy basements. We played one gig that we got kicked out of halfway through, as one will do. But being the Doug, you had brought up the lettering earlier. I don't want to forget, but kudos to Crank for what he brought to this book too, because so much of the characters and the feel and the music of the book is because of the lettering, and I think this is some of the best lettering I've ever seen him do, and he's really done. But between the way he conveys the music and the main character's undiagnosed ADHD, which is a fun trick where, as he's listening to people explain things to him, it just fades out, and then he just has narration on top of it. And there was so much rhythm in that, and the placement and of each balloon has to be exactly right for that to work, and he nailed it every time. It's the best comic for people who can read comics and hear them in their heads. This is a great comic for that sort of that tingle in your brain.
Yeah, I loved it. When he's trying to drown out everyone picking on him, and he puts on the headphones, and the music notes are right. It was such an awesome detail. And when I read it, I was like, we have real quick, J. Michael Miller. I might be wrong, but is Marty a Back to the Future reference? I was going to actually ask that question as well.
No, but I like that. I like that thought. I think I named Marty after a kid that I grew up with, but I also think Marty was originally named after somebody Mike knew, or did I pick that one wholeheartedly?
I never knew. I mean, I have a friend now named Marty, but I never knew any Martys. Okay.
No, Marty was named after the guitar player that was in my high school band, who was one of the greatest guitar players I actually ever knew, but he passed away shortly after high school, so he ends up in a lot of my comics. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time, but yeah, he ends up in a lot of my stuff.
It's awesome of you to do that.
He was nothing like the He was nothing like the Marty in the comic, though. He was way nice. He was actually a real sweetheart.
He didn't
A
stink.
really good kid. Yeah, he didn't stink. He was a good kid. His parents were all right.
No, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, what kind of went into this. Mike, when you were laying, the pencils down, what type of routine did you like to put yourself into? Was there music that you like to listen to, or maybe TV shows that you like to put on?
Well, this one was a little different than normal. I usually have a pretty routine, but we made this during the pandemic, and I was kind of flailing a little bit as far as what is my routine anymore. So I spent a lot of time I just working on one page, and then a week would go by, and then I ended up having to do a bunch of them in a month. So this was very unusual for me. Usually I'm sit down and work and get a couple pages done a day. But yeah, I mean, all the a lot of my music tastes are kind of frozen in amber from the late 80s, and so a lot of the stuff they listen to, I still listen to in my car and stuff. And I pretty much exclusively only watch terrible movies from the 80s and 90s. So it's all there in the book. It's pretty much, it's pretty obvious that the person drawing this book was listening and watching these things.
I find it remarkable that you had that time crunch where you had to do a lot within that month, because there's so much attention to detail. Like the one scene I remember in particular was it was a keychain, and it was Van A. And they took it, and then they wrote Van Halen on it, and I was like, dude, this comic gets so deep. It's beautiful, man.
That's a Rafer thing. That was Rafer all the way. Yeah. I appreciate being. I mean, that's the thing when I'm in a time crunch. You're always thinking, well, this is going to look sloppy, but I'm glad that you did notice.
So Rafer, what went into
Alan did it? Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to give credit to Alan.
Alan, the colors,
yeah. Because as fast as you guys had to work there at the end, he was working.
Yeah, Alan is a super pro.
So
his colors on this were popping.
How did that collaboration work with you and the colorist, Mike?
Well, I've known Alan for a long time. He worked with me on a bunch of DC comics, and I really liked how he made me look on everything. So when I started Battle Pug, I said, "Hey, do you want to, be kind of a partner on this?" And we basically work on everything together, unless the company or collaborator suggests otherwise. He and Crank are pretty much my go-to. That's collaborators. Awesome. I really like them a lot.
That's awesome. Now, Rafer, to throw it back to you, I wanted to ask, how was it when you took a story that was a little bit more serious, and you got to add your flavor to that? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. We were working on like 4 different pitches at the same time when we first started working on Rock Gods. And Rock Gods was the one I think we wanted to do the least, because it was the heaviest. It was the one that would involve us actually looking back at high school, and I knew it was going to be some heavy lifting there and figuring out who these characters were. But kudos on Dark Horse for picking this one up, because it turned out, I think, of the best of the ones we were working on. And as difficult as writing something like this during the pandemic was, where I was already in a state of kind of depression and looking back on why am I like this while writing a script probably wasn't the greatest thing. Being able to write the entire thing first and then going back before Mike even drew a page and making sure that page 1 worked with page 180. And the stuff that you talk about, where those little things with Van Halen written on the thing, that comes up because I was able to write the whole thing out, and I go through and I can, like, that thing probably, I don't remember what it was, but it probably solved a problem somewhere else in the script. Like I had to take something out, or I had to signify that time had passed. But how much time had passed? They had enough time to write Van Halen on this keychain, possibly. So I like those little Easter eggs because they don't feel like they're narrative tricks, but they kind of are. Like if you watch a Hitchcock movie, you go like, oh, that was cool what he did, but really you realize, oh, that cut out 20 minutes of other sort of exposition by doing this one thing. So those are fun. I love doing stuff like that. And thanks for noticing it in the way people are supposed to notice it.
Yeah. And I think
that's a lot of exposition right there.
As like a consumer, as the reader, I would have never guessed that was the intention. I just looked at it, I was like, oh, that's so cool, and like I guess in my head, like subconsciously, I registered that.
Yeah, but I'm goofing off and having fun with that. It's like if I hit a point, I write a script for Mike. I don't want the script to be boring for Mike. I want it to be entertaining. And then when it comes back for me, I don't want to be bored by the comic when it comes back to me. And it's just, I'm having fun. I don't want anybody to be bored during the entire process. Sometimes that causes trouble, but.
So real quick for everyone that is watching, right here is the link once again. You have until June 6th to pre-order this, but like we said earlier, sharing this on Facebook and Twitter is 100% free, and you have nothing to lose. This is one hell of a graphic novel. I loved it. 200 pages of awesome interiors, awesome story. Mike and Rafer, you guys killed it on this. If I had to ask, what character would you say you related to the most in high school?
I find myself in all of those characters. I really do. I find them as like being little sections of myself, but because I modeled them so much off of actual people I knew, like physically, I probably am like the most like Marty. I played guitar and I looked like him. I was a little fatter, but I looked like him. But I mean, there's a bit of my personality in all of them, except for Doug. Doug was the new guy for me. He's based on somebody I know, but it's way more of a Rafer creation than me. It feels to me like he's Rafer. I feel like he's Rafer to me when I read that book, and that's what kind of like endears it to me, because it's like Rafer put himself in my high school history. And now it's like, now I'm going to think about him when I think about my high school days.
I love Doug's character so much, though, like how determined he is, how much of a frontman he actually is without realizing it.
He's determined and oblivious.
So, Rafer, I would assume that you would probably pick Doug?
Yeah. It was unfortunate. Like I knew I was going to go into this book with some sort of first person narration, and just by default it was easier to base it off of a little bit of myself, but the worst part of myself. So it's like, let's do that. Let's make this the worst version of me that I could be in high school. All of my faults just right there in the forefront. So that's basically me. He's like my evil doppelganger, that little jerk. I hated him, but I loved him, and I just wanted to smack him but I understood every choice he made, which is basically all I really wanted is if you could, with any character, that the reader can understand the choices that they make, whether or not they agree with them. But yeah, I'm Doug, the clueless, oblivious kid who's selling T-shirts of a band that doesn't even exist yet. He gets overexcited.
Having to rewrite the name on the posters.
Yeah.
That is a very rare.
I printed up 1,000. Yeah. Oh God, what did I do? I spent so much money on this.
No. I would say I'm probably a mix of Marty and Doug. If there was a mix of those characters, that was probably me in high school. I had the torn up clothes. The little bit of the bully because of just not able to express myself. But music, when I found guitar, it was such a life changer. Like being able to express your frustration out, it's just, I related to this book so much, even though it was from a generation before me. It feels like this book really speaks to anyone who's been through school at any point. So outside of the Rock Gods of Jackson, Tennessee, what are you guys working on in 2023? Any other titles coming out soon?
I have a couple of things that I'm working on right now that I've been asked to not mention yet, but it's not like they're secret. I guess they're want to make sure that they're actually happening. But I have a Hellboy issue that I finished that's coming out all in June, the same month as Rock God. So I have a Hellboy and the BPRD one shot coming out, and a story in an Archie horror comic called Camp Pickens, which is like a horror slasher comic. So I get to draw Veronica in a slasher movie. So,
that's going to be so cool.
But yeah, I've got stuff coming, and the big one is Rock Gods. So yeah, June is a big month for me.
All right, let's go, Rafer. What about you?
I'm in the middle of writing and drawing a Rick and Morty comic, which is a lot more fun. It allowed me to stretch my cartoonist skills and break out some old school like 1920s panel flop kind of.
It looks really good. I've seen it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. It's more. My style doesn't lend itself to the nice clean lines. So it was actually a harder, more difficult task than I expected, but way more fun as well. And I'm writing a lot of various pitches, and I've got my pre-press side business, so I'm working production on a lot of books behind the scenes. Cool. Yeah,
that's so cool.
To try to make the comics look prettier.
You've been involved in some pretty cool titles too, like Rick and Morty, but Minecraft as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I got to write a Minecraft story a few years back, which was a lot of fun. I like these stories where on the surface it doesn't look like you can build much out of it, but I like finding where the story is inside of something, where these little story nuggets, like in Minecraft, there's like, there's witches and there's pillagers and they attack villagers, but that's just sort of like the game mechanics. Like, well, who are they? What kind of personality would just have this?
Who are
this automatic beat? Yeah, who just have this when they're within range of a certain thing, will just attack it. So it's like, what is the
happened to them?
The personality behind? Yeah, so I like figuring that out.
I love that. I love the word.
It's an illness.
Wordplay too. The wordplay. Like, let's. What can we build in this world of Minecraft?
Yeah.
Like, bravo. Yeah. We got Prince Joe over on Facebook saying you are a legend, Mr. Rafer Roberts. Hey, don't forget Mike Norton as well. We got two legends in the chat. So one hell of a release for you guys in 2023. Now let's end the show on some strong notes. I always love asking for a little bit of advice for anyone who might be new to getting started in comics. So with that being said, let's ask questions in your guys' respective roles. For this book at least. So Mike, for anyone looking to get into art, being an artist for the first time, what would be your biggest piece of advice for them?
Two things. Try to learn how to draw everything. Now that sounds like a very big, broad thing, but it is. But what I really mean is to learn how to draw, not just people doing interesting stuff. You want to draw the environment they live in. You want to draw cats and dogs. You want to draw trees. You want to be able to make people live in a real world, so that it's not a bunch of just talking heads. You can do that, but it's a better story if you have a world for people to live in. And the second bit is to do your best to not get discouraged, because it's very hard whenever you do something creative to keep your chin up sometimes, and to because I feel like even more today, it's easy for people to bash things that not even stuff that they don't like, it's just like a a default reaction is people making fun of stuff. So you have to ignore all of that and just do what makes you happy. And if drawing is that, which it was for me, for a year in high school, I thought it was going to be guitar, but drawing is the thing that I can't live without. And if you can't, then don't listen to anybody else.
I love that. I love that a lot. Rafer, what about you? For anyone looking to get into writing for the first time, as someone who, Mike said your script sounded like someone who's had experience for years doing this. So, what would be the biggest piece of advice you could offer someone when maybe approaching their first script?
First, draw your own comics for like 20 years, and then you'll figure out how to do breakdowns.
Drawing your own comic isn't a bad idea. I mean, it really does help you learn.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's such Zen-like advice. Like, the easiest how to get into comics is to start making comics. You want to make comics? Make comics. I just we have an art school down the street, and I just met a college student who printed up their own mini comic and brought it by the studio, and just by handing out a mini comic, like, oh yeah, I'm going to try to work with this person now and make our own comics. So if you want to write comics, you're going to have to draw comics. You can't, I don't know if that makes sense. You're going to have to work with an artist to create the comic, because you can't just write a script and expect anybody, like an editor, to go, oh yeah, I'm going to read this when I get home. They're going to read a comic. They're going to know if you can work with an artist. They're going to learn if you can understand how the visual language of a page works. That's what you need. You need to. You're not writing a movie script. You're not writing a prose novel. You're writing a comic. It's got its own language that you need to know about, that you can't actually use when writing the script, but you have to describe that to the artist in a way that they will understand. Yes.
No, I think it is important to understand how it works, though, because if you don't have any experience, you might try to pack too much into one panel or overdo a panel. So having that experience is...
And you will. Yeah, you will if you do that.
Yeah.
Because I've read those.
First ask yourself... First ask yourself, why is this a comic? Like, why am I doing this as a comic? Why am I not doing it as any other medium? What does the comics language bring to this that something else doesn't? Like, my stories, I think, can only be done as comics. There's certain things in what me and Mike do that can't be translated into other mediums. So, I mean, yeah, that's it. They're comics because they can't be anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome advice there. So let's finish on a
but
strong
still,
note.
please, Netflix, give us money to try.
Netflix, make it happen, baby. So outside of creating, what are you guys consuming, Mike? I mean, video games, if you play them, TV shows, if you watch them, music, what are you listening to or consuming?
Well, I've already discussed the music. I'm pretty much always listening to the Ozzy's Boneyard on Sirius XM, but I just finished playing the new Star Wars game. I really like that.
Jedi Survivor?
Yep.
Ooh, look, I got our good friend right here, BD1.
Oh wow, that's like almost life size.
Yeah, it's a Lego. So I got mine at Walmart. It was like $100, but this thing is awesome.
Yeah, and movies, I just whatever is looks crappy on Tubi, I'm watching it. So.
Oh, that is awesome. Rafer, what about you? What are you consuming outside of creating?
Music-wise, I think I went to go see the Screaming Females a few weeks ago, and then like a week before that was a band called The Church of the Cosmic Skull, which is really awesome, and you should look them up. And then I watched the opposite movies as Mike. I watched nothing but TCM, Turner Classic Movies, and Criterion Channel.
Yeah.
So I'm watching all these highfalutin things.
Yeah,
but also
like a real person.
Rewatching but also like I've been marathoning rewatching like all the Godzilla movies in order, all the old Shoho stuff, and a lot of Jackie Chan. which is on Criterion Channel right now. But yeah, just a lot of classic stuff, old black and whites, and I've been making a point to try to get into more of the modern horror, which is kind of a blind spot. I just watched The Conjuring, which was pretty decent. It was all right. It was pretty decent. Had some good jump scares, but I could kind of predict every single time when one was going to happen.
Yeah.
But they still kind of got me a bit, and had good sound design.
So do you think, like, horror, do you think it's maybe we're just becoming desensitized to all that? Like, it just seems like it's getting more gorier and gorier with each film. Like, I don't know, maybe we as a society are just a lot darker than we used to be.
Probably. I don't know if we're desensitized to horrible things. We're desensitized to horror movies. I think we're used to that language, and we know that it's all fake, and you're just like, oh, I've seen it. If you saw that in real life, you would be in a padded room for the I think people really know the difference.
No, that is awesome. So, Mike, Rafer, thank you too for swinging by for this awesome podcast. Everyone watching, right here is a link to pre-order this. You have until June 6th. Once again, if you can't pre-order it, that is completely understandable. Putting this wherever you can. Word of mouth is 100% free. And you have nothing to lose. I hope you all have a fantastic Friday. Most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.